My name is Jack Miller. I'm the president and CEO of T360, and I'm here to welcome you to our SP200 Live. This session is a deep dive on the Swanepoel Power 200. I have here with me Paul Hagey, who is a senior vice president at T360 and our editor-in-chief and primary researcher for our Swanepoel Trends Report, as well as responsible for oversight of the Real Estate Almanac and the Swanepoel Power 200 list. So welcome, Paul. I know we've got a lot planned for today. Tell us what we're gonna dig into today.
I think we wanted to spend some time to describe the process of SP200, what it's about. There's a lot of elements here that I don't think a lot of our audience necessarily follows or understands about how we build the list, because it's a ranking, and as you know, there's a lot of thought and debate and thinking about where we place people and why and how we place people, and also the logic of the ranking and what we were actually considering and what we're not and what it actually is. So I think this just allows us to bring the ranking a little bit more to life and provide some important information for people to better understand it and potentially to use it and leverage it in all the ways that we think it can be useful for people in their business.
That's very good. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about, what the Swanepoel Power 200 is, and let's go back to the beginning. It launched almost 10 years ago now. So
it was before me in 2014. So this is our 10th annual. So you were as part of the founding group with Stefan and establishing this. Maybe share with us a little bit about what was the vision to establishing it. What was the whole goal for?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the question we really wanted to answer is, if you have to do something in the real estate industry, if there's a big move you want to make, you want to make a change to the industry, you want to have a big impact, who are the most powerful leaders that you could enlist as allies, or that would be important to talk to about that? Like who are the power players? Who are the people that can make something happen in real estate, either because of their position, their personal power, their political power, or a combination of all these different kinds of power? So that was really what we're trying to answer, is who are the people that have the power to make things happen in the industry? And it serves a few purposes for us, and we think for the industry. First of all, it's just to keep track of who's in what powerful positions in the industry. Who are the people that can make things happen? So at least when you're going through your own planning, you're thinking about what you need to do as a business leader. Like who are the other peers that are on the playfield with you that are also trying to make things happen, right? So it serves that purpose. It serves a purpose of acknowledging people, of saying, hey, these are many of the leaders on our list. They have their own conferences. They have thousands of tens of thousands of people that work for them in some cases. They hand out awards, they recognize their staff, all that kind of stuff. And then where's the recognition for them? And so this is another way of kind of recognizing people with they're making a significant contribution to the industry.
Why 200?
That's a good question. There was another list, and I won't name it, but there was another list that was 100. And we said, you know what? The Swanepoel way, as I've learned as being a business partner with Stefan Swanepoel, the Swanepoel way is, you just overdo it. You just blast by your competition. That is the program, right? So if they've got 100, we're going to have 200, and we're going to have a watch list, and we're going to have an outside powers list. So it ends up being 250, 260 people in total. But that's part of it. And we said, we wanted a list that felt meaningful and went deep enough in the industry. It would also let us additionally acknowledge some leaders who maybe are important but wouldn't make it into the top 100. So we felt that having 200 gave us a bigger list. B let us go deeper into the industry leadership database and acknowledge the people there.
And as we've been doing it for 10 years, and as you know, and I think we move to the next slide, assessing power is a bit of a science and an art. But we should be very clear about what criteria we're using to determine the ranking and who is powerful and influential in the industry. And here's some of the bullets. We have a lot of this data for all these people, and we're trying to it's not apples to apples. It's like apples to oranges and bananas and all the things matched together. And then, I mean, I know you led the process this year for the first time, really, to the higher degree. Let me talk a little bit about how we were assessing the mix of all these elements that go into.
It's a really good question. It plays into, we produce other lists, we produce other rankings and studies and analysis where we're really looking at, it isn't just a list, it's a ranking. It's an ordered, like we're saying, this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Which is hard.
Which
makes
hard.
it much harder.
We rank brokerages, and we go through, and we don't just wait for people to submit to us. We go out and we work to find brokerages in the industry, that would qualify for being in the top 1,000. We rank the associations by member count. We rank the MLSs by their subscriber base, right? So we look at these and we try to rank things and order things because we like order. Like T360, we like order. We like things that are logical and thought through and put in an order.
And I think we should stress that like each ranking is carefully thought over. Like each slot is slot by slot, and we're applying like, okay, if this person is here, this person at this other company is about the same, like who should be above whom. It's a very down, and we're tracking all this in this very, very involved spreadsheet that's just like, it has numbers, it has notes, we have org charts from some of the bigger companies, and it's quite a bit of analysis and research.
Yeah, the exercises, we attempt to understand organizations and the people in them and who wields power and authority. And we'll go and we interview some of the top organizations and say, who are the people within your organization? Who reports to who is making things happen in your franchisee base? If you have a lot of franchisees, if you have a field organization, who are driving the field organization? So we work to understand that, and then to put people in an order within a company or an organization that makes sense, and then within the broader list. And then we compare type to type. So we'll say, okay, let's look at let's just look at the brokers. Let's just look at the tech companies. Let's just look at the organized real estate MLS and association. And compare them and say, do we think, where do they fall? Who has more power to make
like internally, and then also where they fit on the list,
and also where they
goes into the. Why don't we go to the next slide? And that this like dovetails into like the actual process. And so this one is we talked about this, like you're leading this year, and we have year-round tracking, and then we're going to talk about the meeting we do after we kind of get everything in order and make a preliminary spreadsheet in November.
Yeah, so the year-round tracking, people will report things into us. They'll send us press releases and information and updates, and and it isn't just coming from T360 clients; it's coming from broadly across the industry. And so we'll collect that information. We also, like I will tell you myself personally, I know Stefan does as well. I know you do as well, Paul. Anytime we see there's a significant announcement or a change happen, or somebody's been promoted or somebody's been hired, all those kinds of things, we circulate it internally. So we share it internally. We record it in that year-round tracking document and make notes about it and say, hey, this was a change. We think this person is going to move up, or we think they're going to move down, or whatever it is that happens. Just recently, and I love this, Real Estate News at realestatenews.com has started publishing an Up the Ladder, where they're talking about moves and changes and people getting new roles and hires. It's great. It's been a great source for us. It's very consistent. They're issuing it every month. So it's allowed us to keep an eye on things even better. But so we do that year round, and it kind of gives us an impression of what's going on. And that isn't just new people. It isn't just new people that have come on our radar. It's also somebody who's already on the list. They do it like the Hannas. The Hannas did several acquisitions last year. So they do an acquisition. We put it in the file and say, hey, look, this is continued demonstration of their ability to do things in the industry that are meaningful and that are big. And, so all of those things we track with the existing people on the list. So that's year-round tracking. That all sets us up to go into a leadership meeting where we invite members of the T360 team, many of whom have been through this process many times. So, Kelly White has come for several different years. Travis Saxton has come for several different years. Dean Cottrell has come for several different years to be involved with. Now let's look at, we've collected all this data. We do a preliminary sort, very preliminary. We take out anybody that's retired, anybody that's no longer in the industry, pull them out. And then we do a preliminary sort and say, here's kind of roughly the quadrants where we think people fall, where they land. And then we spend a full day debating the entire list and moving people around and really thinking about where.
And that's a really interesting day, because there's where the ideas of power and influence and all the people in the room who have different insight and relationships with people, and then like, okay, is this person go here, and what does the top 10 look like, and should this person move up, should they move down, should this person be ranked above this person or not? It's a very interesting debate.
It's art and science. So we have the numbers. We have the organizations, we have lists of acquisitions they've done, we have the membership count and the association and the subscriber count in the MLS world. So we have all of those, all that information at our fingertips. We got a room full of research, and then we spend a full day and just debate it. And then once that's done, we end up with a proposed ranking for the following year, but it's proposed at that point. And then we spend about 4 to 6 weeks refining it, and that's when we go, we double check. And this was a part of the process. This is my first year to drive the process, and so that was.
And one person, and that's your point. One person ultimately has to take responsibility. It's like, all right, all this input, all this feedback, we've debated, we've talked about it, and then late at nights, and you're looking, okay, now what can I stand behind?
Yes, correct. And that this year, that was me. It's in prior years, it's been Stefan. Now, I absolutely sought out Stefan's counsel, because he has done this many years. So he and I debated, and I brought him specific people and said, hey, I don't know this leader very well. Tell me about them. Like, we don't know this. Why were they ranked this way, 2 years ago, and now they're this? So there's some history in the list. There's an understanding of that. He carries a lot of that. So we really did, there's that refinement, but that refinement this year was about 6 weeks of refinement that just, every day or two, picking it back up again, reviewing, and then we get new information, Paul.
Yes.
We did about, Ryan Gorman, who's moved into a strategic advisor, sort of what looks to me like a consulting role with the company. He's no longer in charge. And Sue being promoted, and her, her promotion. So there's a lot of things that
Eric Wu's position changing.
Him stepping down.
These are big changes. Yeah,
they're pretty big, and they impact the whole list. So when those few changes, I think we had probably about a dozen or so leadership changes, like in the months of November and December, that were after we had done that leadership exercise, the sorting exercise, that came through, that we then had to process and consider. And
which happens every year. It's like every year companies are changing leadership, preparing for the new year. This is what we do.
You got to have that. You got to have that round of refinement. You definitely do. Yeah, that's just.
So why don't we go to talk about the how it's organized? And I think one of these slides got a bit out of order. So maybe.
So once you talk us through the organization. You're really structured it and help us put it together.
Yep. So, without an orientation, which we hope this video and this conversation will help be for leaders trying to digest the list and the ranking. So we have a total of 114 leaders that made it on the Power 200 list. That's the top 200 slots within the industry. The reason there's more than, that should be 214 leaders. That's a typo there. That's 214. The reason there's 14 more than you would think is because sometimes there's double and triple equal some slots. For example, the Hannahs, they're kind of equal, like Helen, Hannah Casey, and Hobie and Hagey. They're kind of equals in guiding that company. Same thing with the Jacobys, with Windermere. So some of those are coming together. So that's why there's.
Yeah, I want to explain that. There's some organizations where we can't untangle the leadership. We don't know. We can't pull them apart and say this one is more powerful. And many times they don't want to be untangled. They see themselves as a leadership group, and so we rank them together as a group based on the achievement of their organization and themselves as leaders. And the Hannahs and the Jacobys are two good examples. And there's a few others. There's probably, I think, 7 or 8 combos on the list.
At World Properties is another big one. It's Michael Golden and Thad Wong. Yes. They're co-CEOs. They have been from the start. They're co-founders. Yep. And as the company has grown, they each have key roles, and they each rely on each other, and they say that we both are leading this company, and so we can't. It's not just an option to choose one there. As we're trying to reflect the list. So we break these, each of them, we identify each leader in each slot into whether they fall into brokerage and franchise. That's with leaders that are primarily leading a company dealing with brokerage and franchise operations. And then we have organized real estate, which is realtor associations and MLSs, and technology, which are technology service providers. And then we have other services, which is kind of a catch-all for coaches, media. And this is where the question of power comes into play. Is like, they have a lot of power. Is it not direct power, but they still have enough power? And we debated whether to include them or not, but we felt like we had to include at least a few. And so that's that category. And then we have, we identify women leaders, which we had 47 this year, which ties our all-time high. And that's creeping up over the years, which is
and we had two women in the top 10. We had 2 women in the top 10, which is a first.
Yep. And then we have separate lists that aren't, so those are all within the 214. Those are like just different slices of them, just organized in a different way. And then we have separate lists called the watch list, which is people we anticipate they're doing something interesting that we anticipate may make the list in coming years. And these people don't stay on the list for too long. And if they, for example, if the people on this year's list do not maybe make the list next year, we'll recycle and keep watching them, but then maybe add a fresh set for next year. And outside influencers, these are just the biggest of the big people that aren't directly in the industry itself, but have, by their position, have so much influence and power over it. By, for example, President Biden. We usually have a president here. It's like the policy he makes and dictates can help and influence, or does influence, the industry to a great degree. Same thing with Warren Buffett. He's not in the daily operation, but Gino Buffari, President and CEO of Home Service of America, reports to him, and ultimately Warren is having a big influence there. So that's the idea. So we're talking about power. We can't not talk about some of the biggest players there, even though they're not day-to-day operators within the brokerage industry.
Yeah, 100%. Why don't we, real quickly, I can show people on the site itself, just so we're all oriented to it. So this is the site itself. You go to realestatealmanac.com. This is where you'll find it. This is the main, the main list. This, we have our kind of what I think of as like this is your flashcard view, where you just get just the person's headshot and name of the SP200. By the way, it's a great way to quiz yourself on, do you know all the people in the street? You can look at this and go, do I know these people or not? I can tell you, I think I can probably name 95% of this list, maybe 100%. So I was pretty good. My first year, it was terrible. I was in the 40s. It was not so good. There is a detailed view, which gets you their bios. So we write bios for everybody. Yeah, and then the top 10, there's really nice expanded bios here that talk about their achievements more broadly.
Yeah, and once you hover over in the navigation, Jack, in the Power 200, this is just the categories, as we mentioned, that broken. So it ranks them within the list by the category. So who are the most powerful brokerage and franchise leaders? Here we go. They're ranked in order. And you can see in the top right, it shows what is their actual SP200 rank versus where they rank within the brokerage and franchise category. And so that's just useful to see if we're trying to drill down, so we make it easy to kind of, all right, let's look at the leaders within the brokerage franchise. We can see who ranks relative to who. Same thing with organized real estate. And that's just really useful there. It's just slicing the data a little and the information a little differently, which we find to be really useful. And then you have the bonus lists. I just want to call out, that's where you get those. And you can access who those folks are.
Cool.
So I think, that's just one brief orientation there. There's a lot of information, but information presented in a couple different ways and categorized. And so let's jump to, I think, the top 10. So this year, every year, Jack, is the most dynamic and debated list or ranking, because it means a lot. Like, who's in the top 10, that carries a lot of weight for us, and I think for increasingly, as this list has taken on some momentum and over the time, over 10 years, this means something now. So maybe let's talk a little bit about how we built the top 10 this year.
Yeah, for sure. So every year the top 10, we probably spend a good quarter of the day when we debate. We have our leadership debate. We spend probably a quarter of the day debating the top 10. And usually like we'll debate it and then we'll go do other parts of the list. Then we'll come back to it. We'll debate it some more because it's a consideration. This year, saw some big changes in the market in 2022. We saw some companies that, the iBuying initiatives, became much less significant of a factor. Zillow closed their iBuying down and took a fairly large financial loss because of that. Now, that having been said, we kept, Rich is still in the top 10, being a bigger iBuyer, still in there, still has a lot of power in the industry. But because of iBuying really now becoming much less of a factor in the market, we emphasize that by he was ranked down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
With moving into this market condition, we've been very impressed with Gino's, not just Gino's, the performance of home services, which is unequivocal from a profitability standpoint, done a marvelous job on public companies of being consistently profitable, but also I would say his presence. It seemed like I could not turn around at a major real estate event and not find Gino Blafari sitting in the audience, working, dialoguing with people, getting up on stage, talking. He was very, very present this year, not just for home services, but for the industry as a whole. And so we wanted to acknowledge that that's something where he really leaned in over the last year or the last couple of years, really. And so that's part of why.
So I think we can move to the next slide with the kind of features, more the thought about why, because he was number 4 last year and he jumps to number 1. And we profiled Home Service America in the Swanepoel Trends report this year. And we really dove in and analyzed, like they're the most profitable brokerage company, like including brokerage and franchise and mortgage and everything together. If you analyze the national companies with the public companies, we don't have KWX's numbers, but aside from those, the percentage of revenue, that the net income, they're 6.2% in 2021, which is the latest numbers we have for a full year. And it has been for the last couple of years the same. They're just operators, and in this tough market, he's coming out strong, and it's one of the reasons that we're looking for 2023. They're in a strong position. He's got this ship in a strong, stable direction.
Yeah, and I think it also the way that the company is managed. He really is very hands-on. He's very hands-on with all of the company leaders. Has weekly meetings with all of them. If you go to a talk, he'll talk about the West Coast offense and kind of how he manages and how they have a very strong kind of command and control over their organization, and how he serves as leaders and make sure that they know where they need to go and that he's checked in with them every week. So it's impressive. It's not many people I think could do what he does with his body in terms of that much oversight, that much management, and the results speak for themselves. They've executed excellently, not just in brokerage, also in their ancillary businesses as well, and how they pulled all that together. So we felt, just based on the consistent performance and execution of the home services organization, strong profitability as the most profitable publicly traded company in the industry, to acknowledge Gino as our number 1 leader for the 2023 report.
Yeah, it was a clear. I mean, if you look at, you can put the leaders. It's like this is the exercise. Like, who would we put above them? And I think at the end of the day, we all just it's Gino, this year.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about Sue. So we have an exciting newcomer to the top 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about this. She took over a lot of Ryan Gorman's responsibility, and she's the most powerful woman ever on the list, which is exciting. She's moving up to number 6, and this was made late last year. She's overseeing all the franchise and brokerage operations for the nation's. It's one of the largest holding companies, so that's a massive amount of operations there. So we've seen her move up from 14 from last year. So she's risen up the list over the years, right, Jack?
Yeah, and has taken on a job that encompasses some of the things that Ryan Gorman was responsible for, but also just a very large portfolio. So she's driving a lot of Anywhere's operations and management, and so we felt that it was a strong enough role for her. And also we've seen her over the years take on bigger and bigger jobs and do many different kinds of things within the industry. So we wanted to acknowledge that and say this is a very impactful leader that is part of all of the changes that Anywhere has been going through over the past.
And she's also played a big role in looking to empower women and try to grow women leaders. I think that's what moves her, the movement that she's kind of leading and helping amplify kind of women leaders in the industry, which is kind of apropos that she's the most powerful woman leader ever now in the industry.
And she's paving paths for others to move onto the list, to run big companies, to do big stuff. So we wanted to just acknowledge that and get her right up there, ranked with the best of the best. So
yeah.
All right, let's talk about Andy.
This was a controversial one for us. Really
was.
I'll let you take it. And it was really compelling because we went back and forth in that room, in that meeting. We was like, oh, what has CoStar done yet in the industry? You know, there's a lot of potential. They're making big moves. They're very capable. Does this make them in the top 10? You know, that was the debate.
So I think the conclusion out of our study was that, you know, CoStar's acquired two very substantial assets, Homes.com and HomeSnap, which are substantial technology and marketing assets in the industry. He has a ton of capital at his disposal to come into residential real estate. And those of you that were at the NAR conference saw that in San Diego. Like they painted the town CoStar. So they're in a position to really make a lot of change and be very impactful. They've raised, doing a significant equity raise, $750 million in order to pursue
this year.
This year, 2022, in the year of our ranking.
He has earmarked that for
2023. Yeah, so it's a little hard to ignore, you know, $750 million war chest coming into a more recessionary economy. So we looked at their operating business overall, which we're really focused on residential, but it's hard not to take into account how profitable and performant the CoStar Group has been in general. 1.6 billion in revenue through the third quarter of 2022, a jump of 12% from the same period in 2021. Net income of 245 million for the first three quarters. I mean, this is a
great illustration of like another slice of power, another angle of looking at power. There's the track record and there's the capital at its disposal, but the impact isn't there yet, but you have to bring those into account when we're really trying to assess where he ranks relative to other leaders in the industry. It's really fascinating. This is a component that we've applied to other leaders as well, but he's just a good example here and makes it into the top 10.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we talk about some of our big movers? We had some big movers this year that I think are interesting. So let's jump into these.
Well, this one, you know, I think Peerage is going to be, Realty Partners is going to be a name a lot more in the industry, recognized, especially this year, because they acquired two huge Sotheby's franchises in 2022. And by our calculations, it looks like Peerage is going to be a top 10 brokerage by sales volume when the Mega 1000 comes out later this year, based on those acquisitions. And they just entered the U.S. market. They're a Canadian-based company. They entered the U.S. market in 2019. And as such, the CEO shoots up the list. He jumped 83 slots this year. And that is huge. He's number 38.
Yeah, they've made huge moves, and that's part of what we want to acknowledge is like these are the kind of moves that get you not just on the list, but moved up the list. And then we've also seen how they're working through their, you know, all of the companies they've acquired. They have not taken those leaders out. They've empowered those leaders. So it isn't just that they've acquired these companies. It's that they've come in and now they've given them capital backing in the markets where they acquired. So now they have energized this network of brokerages to be able to do even more sales. So it's a thrill to watch that when leadership comes in and says we're really gonna push hard and to get, we think this year, into the top 10. Very impressive to do that in such a short time.
And this is an example. Within a couple of years, this person's in the top 50 most powerful leaders in the industry. Same thing like Andy Florence just a couple of years ago wasn't ranked on the list. This happens fast. It's emblematic of the changes in the industry. So let's run through the next two. I know we have another slide here. Chris Kelly, he's taken on a much bigger role. It seems like he's going to be involved in the leadership team for a long time there, and he became executive vice president. He's also running the company in Texas.
Ebby Holiday. Yeah, Ebby Holiday, which is a legacy company. One of the gems in the home services brand. Yes. Really well respected, well liked brand.
He's moving into the corporate. He's like moving up with, in talking with him. It seems like he's like positioned to move up within home services in the years to come.
Yeah. So we moved him up significantly with the added responsibilities that he has as an EVP of home services and as a person that looks to be being given a much larger portfolio within the home services brand. So let's talk about Greg Rand.
Yeah, he's it's with Anywhere Advisor, which is the brokerage wing of Anywhere Real Estate. He just has overseeing a big component for the brokerage there. I think it's over $20 billion he's managing, and he's just someone really capable and growing that his region there. I think it's the Midwest and maybe South the component. So this is recognizing that, and this is part of illustration of we get those numbers from Anywhere, and we're able to tell like within who's doing what, and that's part of the research that we're applying, because you can't really see that on Outward because he's in the corporate structure within Anywhere, and it's less visible than some of these other folks.
So he's got 8,700 agents that he's responsible for, $24 billion in annual sales in the central region for Anywhere Advisors. He came back onto the list because he was part of Rand Realty, worked for the family-owned brokerage, and then ran a real estate investment platform, which he sold several years ago, and then became involved with Anywhere. So we've been tracking his level of responsibility and the size of the organization he's driving within Anywhere Real Estate. So that's why we jumped him up. We moved him up just because of that.
Mm-hmm. And so we had a bunch of like every year there's a lot of newcomers. This might have been more than usual, Jack. We had 38 people coming to the list that hadn't been there in the year before, at least, and that's a lot. So here are the ones that stand out. Some of them are new in positions that are just so big, and they're maybe new to the industry, but like CoreLogic is example. The president and CEO is just a huge data platform. We have to recognize that's a role that has a lot of power that carries it.
And I think also just talking to some of the other MLS leadership, how much they've said like this really there's a new sheriff in town. CoreLogic has some leadership that's really strong, that's being responsive, that's helping us with what we need to do. So we want to acknowledge the importance of this particular technology company in the industry, but also that we have some leadership that from all the reports we are getting is very engaged and is getting things done that need to be done for such an important part of the digital infrastructure of real estate.
Mm-hmm. And these others, I think I don't know if we need to touch on all of them. We can call out one or two that you think stand out, but some of these are like Melissa just got appointed, and she's moving up within real estate and becoming an important component there. That we have Michelle Mills,
what's interesting about Melissa was not just nominated, and Anywhere just didn't put her forward. Other people in the industry said that person is amazing. and so we got feedback from people outside of Anywhere who said Melissa McSherry is really impressive and has been given a big job within Anywhere. So that's how she made it onto the list.
And Michelle Mills Clement, people in the industry know her name. She's kind of a powerhouse, and finally, I think she makes a debut at 135, which is a big jump. But she's leading a big association, the 10th largest local association in Chicago, Association of Realtors, and that's an important market there. So, able to recognize her this year. And we had a couple more. Bo McKitty, we learn more and more each year. People submit information. He's a powerful owner within KW, right, Jack?
Yeah, within Keller Williams owns not just a office, runs a very large sales team, runs has stakes in 3 different regions, runs a mortgage lender, Mission Mortgage, has a whole nonprofit arm. So just one of these ones where, again, didn't have him on the list before. We got a nomination. We reached out to his organization, said, tell us more about you as a leader. We got great information from them and realized like, oh, this is a leader that belongs on the list, clearly.
Yep. And Craig Witt is, the U.S. operations for Exit Realty, and he was slow. I think he got appointed last year, and this year is kind of growing to, or in 2021 and 2022 grew into the role, and now recognizing him on the list there.
Yeah.
So I think we ran through some of the highlights, Jack. I think right now it'd be good to, as we reflect on this, like what do you think stands out for you, and how should people use the SB 200?
The list is never as diverse as we want it. We T360 takes some flack for that. Like people come to us and say, well, there's not enough
every year.
Every year. And believe me, we know. Believe me, we know. And that's why this year we made extra efforts to reach out to all of the diversity oriented associations, whether it was NAREP or NAREB, ARIA, several of the smaller Asian organizations we reached out to. We reached out to the Women Council of Realtors. We reached out to Women Up and Sarah Sudachan over at the California Association of Realtors. Reached out to some other people that do a lot of work with diverse and women entrepreneurs in the industry, just to say, hey, we'd like submissions. We'd like to know, are there leaders we've missed? Are there people running substantial companies that we should put on the list? And so we did an extra push this year. We're going to commit to that, doing that every year. Further, I think supporting organizations that are trying to lead and develop and train women or diverse entrepreneurs into their organizations. I think that's something that, as an organization, we do support and will support.
And I think we all might not like it, and we don't, but you look at it, we have an objective. We do the best objective way we can with a methodology that's pretty rigorous. And this is the result. Like we are pretty transparent about our methodology. And if nothing else, it allows us to look at it and to recognize things as they are. And that is the first step in change. And
sure,
it's things we're trying to work on. And as Jack mentioned, we're working with some of these associations, the multicultural associations, and figuring out how to identify more leaders, help grow more leaders, and make this list more diverse, because we all benefit. I think you and I both believe that. I think the T360 at large believes that, and it's something that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. 100 people. So how should people use it? So I have an opinion. I think these are people to watch who are shaping the future of the industry. So these are relationships to be built. These are people to pay attention to. We think that just being aware, depending on who you are, these may be people that you can partner with, people that you can work with if you've got something you're trying to make happen, whether that's, build your own company, build a coalition, make something happen within your association, within your territory, whatever it is. Like this is a who's who for people that make things happen. And I think that's a very powerful way to use the list and to use the leaders on it. First is just knowing all of them, just getting it, knowing who they all are, which again, I think I probably am at the 95%, pretty close to knowing every person on the list to some degree.
It helps you understand the industry a little bit. Like it helps you just understand it and know it. You're a little bit more intimate with it, understanding like who's making the moves. And is this perfect? No, every year we strive for it. We miss people, which is to the point of, every year we get nominated, we get award. Like Bowman Kinty was submitted to us, and there's a nomination process, but it's also, you can just email anybody on our T360 team, and we'll track and include that new leaders in consideration for next year. We want to know more. So I think we talked about how do you get on the list. We'll make bold moves and also make us aware of it. Make the industry know. Real Estate News, reach out to them with your press releases. Reach out to us and let us know, because we will incorporate you into our process.
Yeah, that's it. Get on the industry radar, get on our radar. tell us what's going on. We devote 500 to 1,000 hours of research a year to this exercise, and that's a lot of time, but it's a big industry. There's a lot of leadership out there, and we don't always know. So the more you keep us in the loop, the better we can actually reflect the accomplishments and achievements of you and your organization. So that's it.
Well, Jack, I think we ran through this list. There's a lot here. We hope it was informal. We wanted to bring it to life. There's a lot of work here. There's a lot of data and information and insights to be gleaned, and we hope people can use it and leverage it, and inspire them. Also, see who they can partner with, and grow, and potentially become better and more profitable, more productive, and all that. A brighter future for all of us.
Yep, 100%. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us for our overview of the SP200 on our SP200 Live. We'll be doing some sessions like this also to cover different parts of the Real Estate Almanac as we release them, just to give background and context, and those that want to go a little bit deeper than just going to the website and looking at the rankings. We want to give a bigger picture, a bigger story, because there is a lot that goes into all of this research work. And Paul, again, thank you for being here today and for helping explicate the lists and the rankings.
Definitely. Thank you, Jack.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.